in the Bible. Ophanim. Ophanim is the ancient Hebrew word for wheels. The singular is ophan. Of course, wheels are cited several times in the Old Testament, and ophanim can refer to normal wheels on a cart or chariot, but of particular interest are the wheels on the throne of God, mentioned in Ezekiel's vision. Ophanim are mentioned in Ezekiel 1 verses 15 to 21. The Bible is brimming with incredible imagery. God gives us a look into a realm to which human eyes rarely have access through His holy word. We are never disappointed when we enter into Scripture, eager to learn more about God, His methods, and His intentions. The mysteries of the universe, the heavens, and spiritual creatures are revealed in the pages of the Bible so that we can better understand Him. The Ophanim reveal our God as King and affirm the sovereignty of His reign. What does the Bible say about Ophanim? In the year 597 BC, the Babylonians who were invading Judah took Jehoiakim, king of Judah, along with a priest named Ezekiel and 10,000 other Jews, and carried them to a hamlet called Tel Abib. Ezekiel had been in exile for 5 years when God appeared to him by a river in Kebar, which is now in the Middle East. God used his encounter to start Ezekiel's ministry as a prophet by showing him an astounding vision. It is hard to provide a definition for the Ophanim depicted in Ezekiel's vision without taking into account the entirety of the revelation. God chooses to open the heavens in front of Ezekiel's temporal eyes. Ezekiel witnesses a foreboding cloud of lightning and flame coming from the direction of the north. Within the cloud, there are 4 lighted beings that shine brightly. Despite the fact that the beings have the appearance of humans, they are not human in any way. Each of them possesses 4 different faces: 1 human face, 1 lion face, 1 ox face, and 1 eagle face. The prophet does not record these creatures by name in Ezekiel 1, where the recounting of his vision begins, but by chapter 10, they're identified as cherubim. Ezekiel 1, verses 15 to 21, Amplified Bible. Now as I look at the living beings, I saw 1 wheel on the ground beside the living beings, for each of the 4 of them. Regarding the appearance of the wheels and their construction, they gleamed like chrysolite, beryl, olivine, and the 4 were made alike. Their appearance and construction were a wheel, set at a right angle within a wheel. Whenever they moved, they went in any one of their 4 directions without turning as they moved. Regarding their rims, they were so high that they were awesome and dreadful, and the rims of all 4 of them were full of eyes all around. Whenever the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them, and when the living beings rose from the earth, the wheels rose also. Wherever the Spirit went, the beings went in that direction, and the wheels rose along with them, for the spirit or life of the living beings was in the wheels. Whenever those went, these went, and whenever those came to a stop, these came to a stop. And whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose close beside them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. We read a wheel was on the earth beside each living creature. What Ezekiel saw or described in this passage is difficult to visualize in its entirety. It is presumably an image of a magnificent chariot with 4 wheels that is bringing the throne of God. The scene gives the impression of continuous motion and activity, not only on the part of the living beings themselves, but also on the part of the throne that God sits on. Ezekiel 1 verse 26, Amplified Bible. Now above the expanse that was over their heads there was something resembling a throne. It appeared like it was made of sapphire, or lapis lazuli, and seated on that which looked like a throne, high up was a figure with the appearance of a man. We read when they moved, they went toward any one of 4 directions. They did not turn aside when they went. The sense seems to be that the wheels and their workings could move in any direction, but there was no sense of chaos or disorder to their movements. A popular Bible commentator stated about this, like a ball bearing, they could move in any direction without any steering mechanism. As for their rims, they were so high they were awesome, and their rims were full of eyes. Again, it is difficult to image in one's mind exactly what Ezekiel saw or stated in this passage. The description of full of eyes was how John described the cherubim themselves. Revelation 4 verse 6, Amplified Bible. And in front of the throne there was something like a sea or large expanse of glass, like the clearest crystal. In the center and around the throne were 4 living creatures who were full of eyes in front and behind, seeing everything and knowing everything that is around them. The sense is of excellent knowledge and intelligence. They are not dead metal. Their livingness is shown by their eyes with which they can see the way, and by their lifelink with the living creatures above them. The 4 wheels and their workings moved in step with the 4 cherubim as they rotated. They were linked together in such a way that Ezekiel was able to write the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Ezekiel 43 verses 1 to 5. Then he, the angel, led me to the gate that faces towards the east. And behold, the glory and brilliance of the God of Israel was coming from the way of the east. And his voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. And it was like the appearance of the vision which I saw, like the vision I saw when he came to destroy the city. And the visions were like the vision I saw beside the river of Chebar, near Babylon. And I fell face downward. And the glory and brilliance of the Lord entered the temple by way of the gate facing toward the east. Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner courtyard, and behold, the glory and brilliance of the Lord filled the temple. Ophanim are also mentioned similarly in Ezekiel 10 verses 9 to 13. Ezekiel 10 verses 9 to 13. Amplified Bible. Then I looked, and behold, there were 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside one cherub, and another wheel beside each other cherub, and the appearance of the wheels was like a sparkling Tarshish stone, beryl. As for their appearance, all 4 looked alike, as if one wheel were within another wheel. When they moved, they went in any of their 4 directions without turning as they went, but they followed in the direction which they faced, without turning as they went. Their whole body, their backs, their hands, their wings, and the wheels were full of eyes all around, even the wheels belonging to all 4 of them. Regarding the wheels attached to them, I heard them called the whirling, rolling, revolving wheels. There were 4 wheels by the cherubim. Ezekiel 1 verses 15 to 21 described these wheels in some detail. The general impression is of constant activity, motion, and free movement with no chaos or disorder. They did not turn aside when they went, but followed in the direction the head was facing. If the wheels and the cherubim describe God's chariot or chariot throne, then it is clear that Ezekiel was to understand that it was on the move. It was in Babylon, now it is in Jerusalem, at the temple. Ezekiel 1 verse 18 describes eyes in reference with the wheels. Here we learn that the cherubim themselves were full of eyes all around, and this fits with the later characterization of the cherubim found in Revelation 4 verse 6. The image seems bizarre to the modern reader. But one must remember that this is a visionary experience. The surrealistic features may overwhelm realism. In the passages above, the throne of God is set on wheels, ophanim, and then pushed by 4 angels. There are wheels inside of wheels at cross angles, with the effect that the throne can move in any direction without having to turn. The angels who are powering the throne also have 4 faces, one facing each direction, so they can likewise travel in any order without turning. The angels are identified as cherubim. The ophanim has been a point of fascination for many, and later Jewish apocalyptic writers gave them a life of their own. The wheels themselves came to be identified as a distinct category of angel, the ophanim. Seraphim and cherubim are mentioned in Scripture as angels, and to this, some have added the ophanim, also spelled O-F-A-N-I-M. Ezekiel sees a crystal vault that is so awe-inspiring that the only word that comes to mind for him to use to describe it is awesome. This vault is located above the heads of the 4 cherubim and the ophanim. Above the vault he sees a brilliant and glittering throne, and high above the throne he sees what is described as the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. Ezekiel immediately falls face down after having his eyes opened to the majesty of God's splendor, and he then hears the booming voice of the Almighty instructing him in his mission to bring the punishment of God onto Israel for their disobedience. Why do some refer to the ophanim as angels? There is not a single mention of the ophanim in the Bible being angelic creatures, but apocryphal Jewish writers branded them as a class of angel and lists them in their hierarchy of angels, along with the seraphim and cherubim, because of the ophanim's unique lifelikeness, their supernatural power, and their close proximity to God's throne, not to mention the multitude of eyes. Whether or not the ophanim are actually angelic beings or merely a divinely powered mechanism of multi-dimensional transport doesn't matter. What does matter is the ophanim's function in displaying God's glory to Ezekiel and every other believer who would one day read his account and gain a renewed vision of God's kingship. What do the ophanim reveal about God? Both in appearance and operation, the ophanim that appear in Ezekiel's vision demonstrate God's absolute dominion over the entire cosmos. The omnidirectional wheels themselves serve as a constant reminder to us that the God we serve is omnipresent, meaning that he is able to be in all places at all times. As the Spirit of God guides the cherubim, Ezekiel 1 verse 12, that same Spirit indwells the ophanim. When the creatures moved, they also moved. When the creatures stood still, they also stood still. And when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels rose along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Ezekiel 1 verse 20. This symbolic unity of submission displays God's supreme authority and right to rule and reign, his omnipotence. And the eyes that cover the wheels and the cherubim are symbolic of God's omniscience. He is all-seeing, all-knowing. Why is it important for Christians to know about the supernatural realm? Ephesians 6, verses 11 to 12, Amplified Bible. Put on the full armor of God, for his precepts are like the splendid armor of a heavily armed soldier, so that you may be able to successfully stand up against all the schemes and the strategies and the deceits of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, contending only with the physical opponents, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly supernatural places. In Ephesians 6 verse 12, we're told that our struggle is not against flesh. God desires believers to be aware of the world beyond what our temporal eyes can see, so that we, in the Lord's mighty power, can be prepared to take on whatever scheme the enemy has in store. Extremism is prevalent in today's society. On one end of the scale, there are believers who downplay the supernatural parts of their faith and insist on maintaining a naturalistic worldview, which is characterized by an exclusive reliance on the truths of doctrinal teachings for day-to-day living. And on the opposite end of the spectrum are those people who are so preoccupied with the spiritual realm because of the allure it holds for them that they are of little help on earth. We must first ensure that our eyes are open to the reality of the situation. When Elisha's servant was terrified by the surrounding enemy in 2 Kings 6 verse 16, the prophet tells the young man, "Don't be afraid." 2 Kings 6 verses 16 to 17, Amplified Bible. Elisha answered, "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Then Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha. The world in which we live cannot be considered our home. There is a world that we cannot see, yet it is rife with conflict over our own souls. When we make the decision to investigate the Bible and seek God's perspective on the supernatural, we move one step closer to the establishment of God's kingdom.